So we will be recording this training today, and we're so grateful to each and every one of you for attending. If you have questions today, please post those questions in the chat as we go along, but you may also unmute yourself to ask questions as we go. We will have an evaluation for you to complete at the end, and are just really grateful. It's a great crowd today. We can see many weekly faces as well as some new faces today. So I'm so excited to see you all here. Jose is going to get us started with a word of encouragement.
Technology. As I was saying, thank you so much for the invitation, for the warm welcome. And it is always nice to host all of you in this Zoom training. Thank you so much, Firefighter Brian Andersen, for joining us today. And we're looking forward to the class. So today, as usual, I'll go inside and we shall read from the 90 Days of Encouragement, copy number 3, Stretching Your Faith. The president is Chaplain Craig Duck, and he distributed this book to us for firefighters to stay encouraged in the firehouse. So today we're going to read day number 26 in the book. It says Crew Integrity. It is written by Andrew Stans. He's a battalion chief with a large metro department in North Carolina and FCF international member. And I read, just as body through one has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. You'll get this verse from 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 12. Firefighters understand the importance of working together. The efficiency of a fire crew who is riding short suffers dramatically with the loss of each member. The most recent NIST manpower study verifies this. In life, as in firefighting, it is a relief to know that someone is there to help you bear the load. It gives one great comfort and confidence when facing insurmountable circumstances to have someone by their side to walk with them through the fire. God designed us for relationship, and this is reiterated in all aspects of our life. We are not meant to be alone. He wants us to maintain crew integrity by first having a relationship with God through Christ and filled with the Holy Spirit. Go and fulfill your role in God's incident action plan by being part of body of Christ. So today that's the word that we should hold each other like brothers and sisters, and we should be always together in the fire scene. Let's pray as we start. Dear Heavenly Father, we say thank you. Thank you for giving us this beautiful day, this beautiful time that we have for the class. We ask of you that you help us so that we can attend the class and help us to stay connected with technology. Thank you for Firefighter and Brian Andersen. May you give him confidence and also the assurance that we are ready to learn and to receive from him. We pray all this, trusting and believing in Jesus' name. Amen. Brian Andersen, the floor is yours, sir. Bring it on.
Well, thanks for the intro, Jose. So, hello, everyone. My name is Brian Andersen. I did a class a few weeks ago, so you might remember me from that. Today, we're going to talk about fire prevention and kind of like what's the firefighter's role in it. It's one of those things that fire prevention is something that can start on the bottom and work its way up. Not everything needs to start at the chief, you know. The fire chief doesn't have to be the one to go out and push all these programs. So we're going to start with the case study, and it's a very own Jose. During tea time, you're welcome to ask Jose more questions about it in particular. But as we know, Jose, he does a lot in Mathari Valley as far as fire prevention goes. He's out there multiple times a day, every day. And then in this particular case study this summer, they estimated, if I remember right, is 140 homes were saved, and that would have been equated to about 500 people that would have been displaced had he not done the fire prevention effort that he did in the training. What it was a propane cylinder or cooking cylinder of some sort had caught fire. Someone had attended Jose's training and knew how to control and extinguish that fire safely so it didn't spread. So very good job, Jose.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that is an amazing save. It's very rare when we do fire prevention, you can't see what you're saving. And as firefighters, that we like that instant gratification of you put water on the fire and the fire goes out. Well, fire prevention, you can't see that. So it's much harder to see the examples like that, but that's a very clear one of a save that could have saved a lot of lives, and at the very least, it saved a lot of families' possessions and stuff from being displaced. So very good job, Jose. So in this class, we're going to be able to identify what hazards are in your community and how to mitigate those hazards. A lot of these hazards you won't get down to like zero. The hazards are always going to be persistent in your community, but we need to be able to identify them, and we need to be able to reduce them down to the lowest point possible. And while we're talking about this, we're going to have more fire prevention type classes at our virtual training conference here in a couple weeks. The ones I'll be teaching is pre-fire planning and building construction with Chief Cohen. And we'll do the same thing there where we're looking at what hazards are in our jurisdiction and in our response area, and how can we make those hazards minimal so we can safely respond. So Everyone Goes Home is a life safety initiative from the National Fallen Firefighters here in the United States, where they're trying to reduce all firefighter fatalities to zero. For a long time, we hung around like the 100 mark. Basically 100 firefighters a year would die in the United States. So this Everyone Goes Home, they're like, why? They did an in-depth research on why firefighters are dying and how can we prevent the firefighter fatalities. And this is what they came up with, the 16 firefighter life safety initiatives. The very first one pertains to fire prevention. We got to advocate the culture within ourselves to realize that we have responsibility to make these fires not happen if possible, right? It is our responsibility. No one else is going to do it. So, and then also when you look at number 14 and 15, public education must receive more resources. In 14, advocacy must be strengthened for code enforcement and fire sprinklers in the home, which I understand in Africa, and I was in Nairobi last year. That's a long ways from happening where you have code enforcement in fire sprinklers. But it just shows that we're going to talk about what we call the 5 E's here in a little bit. It shows that the importance of using these 5 E's to reduce your fire fatalities. Okay, and part of the 5 E's is enforcement and engineering. Engineering would be fire sprinklers, whether it be homes or businesses, okay? So we're taking these life safety initiatives and we analyze how can we change our culture within ourselves. And as a firefighter personally, this is a one-on-one accountability on how can we save lives. It's not always about just hopping in the fire truck and going and put out fires. So I want to talk about our Africa Fire Service networking group on Facebook, because when I looked on there on October 7th, there was a post about what you guys do for fire prevention in your community. And as of yesterday, there was 0 comments on that post. I can't really speculate why there's 0 comments, but part of the reason might be just because you haven't received the training. So hopefully this changes it, where you can start doing those fire prevention efforts as a firefighter or as a company level, you know, maybe your fire crew can do it. The best way to understand fire prevention though, is you have to understand how humans are going to behave during fire. Now this fire-related human behavior can really take up, like in my degree, when I went to get my degree, I had a whole semester on fire-related human behavior. It's a very in-depth analysis exactly on why people are going to behave the way they do. We had a nightclub that caught on fire in the United States 18 years ago or so. 104 people died in that nightclub fire. There was lots of exits in the building, but what they figured out is 8 people only used alternative exits. Everyone ran for the main exit. And when we look at the fire fatalities in that fire in particular, and along a lot of other fires, but in that one, the fire-related human behavior really came into a factor on why so many people died. People are very poor estimators of their risk. In that fire, the building owner used non-fire rated soundproofing type foam insulation, and that insulation caught on fire because of pyrotechnics from a band. So right there, the band didn't understand the risk of the pyrotechnics they were using, but they looked cool. And the homeowner or business owner didn't understand the risk of what he was doing to his business. People do what they're familiar in the event of a crisis. Okay, so it's just like fire training. When you guys go to a fire, you are not going to become better all of a sudden. You're going to fall back to whatever you're trained to do, and that's how you're going to put out the fire. So the more training and more knowledge you have, the better of a firefighter you will be. So with fire-related human behavior, people are going to fall back to what they're familiar with, and that means they're going to go back to the same exit that they came in. Because when you go into a building, you automatically have a mental map of your head of what that building layout is, and you're comfortable with your map in your head. And they'll look at leaders in a time of panic. We see this all the time in about every crisis situation. My lights shut off on me. But about every crisis situation, we see that certain leaders step up and certain leaders motivate people to drive a certain way to get the results that's needed. In the World Trade Center attack, there was dozens and hundreds of people probably that they would stay on the floors that were impacted by fire, and they would direct people to the exits. They would escort people down the stairs. So we understand that during events, that's going to happen. And then there's also individual traits on how each person is going to respond to a fire. And like I said, this is going to be, this course on fire-related human behavior could take hours and hours and days to do, because you could get into like what introvert people are going to do versus extroverts. You know, most of us are extroverts. We like to communicate and socialize and be part of a team, and there's nothing wrong with introverts either. But So it's not one's better than the other. It's just who we are, and we can look at that to determine how we respond to a fire. So humans are going to respond to any sort of crisis, whether it be a fire or whatever, based on their experiences. Unfortunately, in Nairobi, we saw that several people throughout their lifetime might have 5 fires or more, you know. In the United States, that's not really heard of. It's very rare that a family will have to experience a fire, let alone multiple. So by the time that family gets to the 5th fire, they're going to react differently than what they reacted to on the 1st fire. Then you have to think about when you get down to physical and mental capabilities, there's a lot of handicapped citizens that we have to protect. And how are they going to be able to? What are the laws in place in your community to allow them a survivable space? In the United States, most businesses have some sort of survivable space, or they have an egress outside that can work for handicapped individuals. So those are just some of the reasons why humans will respond in a certain way. And like I said, it could just keep going on and on. But the more you learn about fire-related human behavior, the more we can utilize it to our advantage. Because we understand how humans are going to respond. So if we're out there doing pre-fire plan, for example, we can tell a business owner, educate a business owner, hey, you have a lot of stuff on this entrance and this is your main entrance. If we widen that entrance, you know, move some of those displays back maybe a foot or 2, it will allow more people to go through. Or maybe we can use it to convince a business owner, you have a back entrance there, but it's not really marked very well. So maybe you can find a way to mark it so your customers know how to do it, okay? And also, like Jose did with his case study, Jose gave someone a critical skill, a critical life skill that they will utilize forever now. And by giving them that skill, they didn't panic. They knew what to do and they accomplished their mission based on their knowledge. So fire prevention worked that way because Jose went and changed the fire-related human behavior on at least that one individual. So what are you guys currently doing? That's just a rhetorical question, but it's something you can talk about at tea time after class, is what do you guys currently do? You would be very surprised about what informal fire prevention you do. Even just something simple as waving at a kid that likes a fire truck as you're driving by. You're teaching that kid that firefighters are friendly and that we're here for you. You know, you consciously do not do it for that reason, but that is fire prevention. And maybe you have, like in this example, you're at a fire. I always try to make sure that kids aren't around during the fire, but maybe afterwards, after you get everything cleaned up, kid comes over, takes a picture with the fire truck. That's probably okay. As long as you explain to the kid while we're working, you stay away, it'll probably be okay. The formal fire prevention efforts, I didn't see much outside of what AFM did in Kenya. I'm not saying it wasn't happening, it's just what I didn't see, you know. So I don't know what you guys are doing in Africa, but hopefully this gives you a skill set that you can utilize, and you can start doing it as a company. Just 4 firefighters in a fire truck can go out and start doing this. And then what you also see when you guys start this process, you'll start seeing issues within your communities that are reoccurring risk, and you'll be able to justify to your fire chiefs, and your fire chiefs will be able to justify to whoever that you should have a budget to deal with this risk in particular, whatever it might be. Say you go out into your community and you realize you can't identify the fire hydrants because they're all blocked. So maybe you can work a way so you can better identify fire hydrants, okay? So what are the hazards in your response area and what deaths are occurring? In my particular case, we're in a pretty dry season in North Dakota, and we're harvesting the fields right now. So yesterday we had 2 fires that were just because it's dry and there's farm machinery that's going around. So right now our hazards are different than what they would be in the wintertime. In the wintertime, we have snow and ice and blizzards and extreme cold. So fire prevention is always going to be changing. Right now, we can educate the farmers, how to use fire extinguishers if their tractor's caught on fire. And that's what happened yesterday is the farmers knew how to control a fire. They didn't get it put out. It was a combine on fire, but it controlled it enough that when we got there, we were able to extinguish it and save the combine. Those are like $200,000 or something crazy. So it's a little bit of fire prevention, but it keeps shifting. So you always have to identify, whether it be as a company or whatever, identify what are you going to? Do you see trends that are emerging? And then how can you reverse those trends to stop? Right now, we can't really reverse the trends because we can't make it rain in North Dakota, and that's what we need. But what we can do is educate the farmers that they need to be constantly on the lookout for fires and to immediately call us, and this is how they can control the fire until we get there, so it's not so large, hopefully. So what part of your, and this would be another, I put it in here hoping you guys would talk about it during tea time more than now, because we're kind of on a time crunching with these classes. What part of your fire prevention efforts work? And that's just, like I said, something you can bring up at tea. You could tell your friends that, hey, this is working for us. We don't have this type of call anymore or whatever. And what do you think your shortcomings are with our fire prevention efforts? Like I said, if we had this fire prevention effort that we do this time of year, here in 3 months when there's going to be snow on the ground and probably 2 feet of snow or whatever, it's a completely different fire prevention thing from month to month. So we need to reanalyze what's working, what doesn't work, and what are the shortcomings. So this is the 5 E's. After you analyze what's working, what is working and what doesn't work, you can use the 5 E's to develop a plan to better mitigate your risk. The 5 E's are education, engineering, enforcement, economic incentive, and emergency response. Education is something like what Jose did with that citizen. He educated the citizen that, hey, this is what you do if there's a fire. This is how you handle it. And as you can see, education worked in that case and it saved a lot of lives. Engineering, maybe engineering would be something more, someone designs a safer way of cooking. maybe like stoves that have, like what our stoves in the United States, they have automatic shutoffs if they get too hot. That's an engineering effort that reduces the risk of fire. Enforcement, there's several different types of enforcement. The most common one in the fire service is fire code inspections. So when you go out to a building and you inspect them, and if they don't meet fire code, you force them to meet fire code, or there's going to be some sort of negative fine or something. Enforcement, in my eyes, is the worst one to do. You don't make friends, and it's just not, even in the United States, where the fire service is looked at differently than in some parts of Africa, we have a hard time with enforcement. You don't catch, I don't know how to say this. You make a lot of people mad, basically, and it's generally not a good thing. If you go in there to do a pre-plan, though, you can just suggest that they make these changes, and sometimes they'll take your suggestion. So I try to stay away from enforcement. There's just sometimes you have to do it. I was a fire marshal for 5 years, and there's just sometimes you had to be the tough guy, but I would just really stay away from that as much as possible. Economic incentive is kind of something that's unique to do in the fire service, hard to do, but it has amazing results, actually. So in the United States, when someone wants to build a housing development, we want to encourage them to put fire sprinklers in these houses. But most of the time, people will not do that because of the cost of fire sprinklers. So what we do in the United States is you're allowed to put your fire hydrants further apart, or you're allowed to have smaller property sizes or build houses closer together if you have these sprinklers. So in the long run, we're allowing them maybe to get 3 or 4 more houses into this housing development, so they make more money. So the risk of fire has been mitigated. The business owner made money, so it works hand in hand for both people. Now, as a company level, you guys can't make those trade-offs. You're right. It has to go through higher ups than probably even your fire chief. But it is something to think about, where if you guys see an opportunity to be like, hey, if you do this, this will happen. It might be worth looking into. The fifth one is kind of your blanket, like, we can't mitigate everything, but bang for your buck, this is the way to go, is emergency response. Say, for instance, it would be very expensive to try to prevent every car accident. It's probably not impossible. You'd just be very expensive. It'd be lots of regulations and all that stuff. But if you train and equip the firefighters how to handle car accidents, your lives lost will go down. So you still meet your mitigation risk with your lives lost going down. So that would be like emergency response, is just equipping and training the responders so that they can still save lives and the crisis is mitigated to a lower standard. So we're going to talk about pre-fire planning now. This could be any sort of incident, not just fire plans. But like I said, our virtual 2020 conference will have a pre-fire plan. In that, you'll learn building construction, you'll learn how to identify water sources, etc. You'll make pre-fire plans. This is something that's really cheap to do. like you just need some paper and pens basically, and then you go out and talk to your citizens. It's great for public relations. And it's going to be one of those things that's really hard to see your results. But what happens is you'll go do these pre-fire plans. You'll go out to a business. Let's just say we go out to a factory that makes pipe or whatever. So you go to the pipe factory, you examine their business. While you're there, you can do 4 out of the 5 E's. I would stay away from enforcement. Never enforce anything on a pre-fire plan. Firefighters are supposed to be the good guys. We have the saying, you'll catch more flies with honey than vinegar. We want to be nice. We want to go out there. While you're out there, you can say, hey, this exit's kind of getting blocked by this machine. Can we move this machine a couple foot this way? And they might do it, okay? So always stay away from enforcement. But when you go out there, you can do engineering efforts. You can look at their fire sprinklers and be like, hey, this fire sprinkler is kind of getting out of date. Maybe you should have someone come inspect it. They might do that. Or you might be able to be like, hey, this door you guys always leave open. But if you close this door, it's going to limit your fire spread. That's an engineering effort right there, and it's free for everyone to do. So you already mitigated the risk. When you're out there, you can, for your emergency response, you can be like, we're going to need 1 ladder truck and 1 fire engine out here if this place is on fire. So when you go back to your fire station, you change your SOPs and SOGs, and you get it so those 2 vehicles automatically go out there. Maybe before you only sent 1 fire engine, but because you did that pre-fire planning, you knew what apparatus you were going to need. You know exactly where you're going to park those apparatus. So you improved your emergent response. One of the 5 E's is emergency response. You improved that just by going to do a pre-fire plan. While you're out there, you can always educate. Everywhere you go, you should be an educator. Every class I ever taught in the fire service, I've talked about pride in the fire service. And this is where your pride in the fire service comes in. Any chance you get, you're talking about the fire service, you're talking about what good it does for the community, and you're talking to people on how to save themselves and others in the event of a fire. Teach them about egress routes. Teach them about how to store materials away from electrical sources that could start fires. So like I said, come to the conference. It's going to be a virtual one this year, and you can learn more about these pre-fire plans. Inspections. This is the enforcement part of the fire code. It's very tricky to start. I would say it's probably the least effective. And I used to do these inspections every day for a career, but it's just really hard to get people don't like to be forced to do anything. That probably goes back to the fire related human behavior, is people are stubborn sometimes. But there are times where inspections are just probably needed. But to do inspections, there's all sorts of legal issues. You have to have a fire code adopted, and you have to be trained on it. You have to be whatever, and certified on it. I would stay away from inspections, but know that they are a possibility. If your department has an inspection team, they're a possibility. Residential fire surveys. I wanted to throw this in because this is something that's unique. It's an extremely great tool to use. At the same time, the amount of time you invest in one residential fire survey versus what you get out of it. You know, when you go to a business, there's hundreds of people that go through that business in any given week or whatever. So you're impacting a lot of lives when you go and you protect that business. When you do a residential fire survey, you're only impacting that family. Don't get me wrong, it's very, very important to impact that family. Because when we see our fire deaths, where do we see them? We see them in the homes for the most part. So what issues you're going to have with this is citizens won't like you to come into their house. Obviously, you're not going to enter someone's house and just do inspections. You need to get permission to do it. And these surveys will kind of mirror the pre-incident plans of commercial ones. So once again, if you do that class through AFM, you'll kind of know how to do these. But you need to be very thankful. If anyone lets you in their house, you should be extremely appreciative. Say thank you a lot, sir, ma'am, whatever, and be polite. And then tell them what you think would be better for them, but don't do it in a forceful, like, you have to do it this way. Don't try to scare them. Just tell them, you know, you cook over here next to your laundry and next to your clothes. So maybe you could separate the clothes or something. There should never be any pictures taken in a pre-fire residential survey, because people want their privacy. It works well for targeted areas. And what I mean by that, if you go to a fire, like Jose's a targeted area with Mathari Valley, when you go to a fire, and if you see fire in a lot in a certain area, you can target that area. So when is the best time to do a residential fire survey? This goes back to fire-related human behavior. When someone sees a fire in their neighborhood or a fire with someone they know, they think to themselves, oh, wow, that could have been me. I could have lost a family member. I could have lost all my possessions. So if there's a fire in a neighborhood, you can scatter throughout that neighborhood and ask those neighbors, would you like us to come into your house and see how you could be safer? You will get a lot of results then. If you go to a random house today and be like, hey, you want me to come into your house and see if I can help make you safe, you're going to get told no most of the time. But if there's a major fire in that neighborhood where a lot of houses are destroyed or if someone dies, then you can have them at their hearts, basically, because they're emotionally connected and they don't want that to happen to them. So if you guys do have a chance where you have a fire in the neighborhood, then that's the time to do a residential fire survey. And as far as the messages you should be telling these residents, they must be up to date and they must be accurate, which means you have to know your stuff, because you can't bluff them. You can't make stuff up here. If they ask you a question and you don't know the answer to, it's okay to say, I don't know. Just tell them, I don't know. I'll look it up. I'll ask my networking group on Facebook and I'll get back to you. Never give them false information, misleading information, because that's how you're going to build your trust with these citizens. If you give them misleading information and if you tell them something that's not quite right, then that goes to your trust issue, where you have to build and maintain that trust. It's a constant thing, even in the United States, where you're maintaining and building, working on that trust. here's some ideas on what you could do for your surveys: smoke detectors, how to call the fire department, stop, drop, and roll, safety surveys. I know Jose does a lot with cooking fires. So those are just some of the messages. They're really simple. I mean, you can teach 100 people at once how to stop, drop, and roll, and it doesn't cost you anything, right? So your chief's not going to be mad that you're spending all the money. So you have to be a champion for this. Fire prevention can start at the bottom up because you can do it with very limited funding. Like I said, you can go out right now after this class and you can teach someone how to stop, drop, and roll for free. You can go out into your neighborhoods and you can identify hazards. You drive your neighborhoods anyways. You know what calls do you go on. Sometimes the chiefs are too busy doing chief stuff. I don't know what chief stuff is necessarily, but they're too busy doing that to realize that you're going to a certain neighborhood more often than another neighborhood. You can tell your chief that. So when I say fire prevention can start from the bottom up, it really can start from the bottom up. Once again, you can't see fire prevention efforts work. And that's a really hard thing to understand. It's really hard to justify budgets in the fire service when it comes to fire prevention, because you don't know how many fires didn't happen today because you were there. Every time you have a confirmed fire prevention success like Jose had, you need to celebrate that in the neighborhood it happened. Like I said, that's when you have them emotionally connected. And I know there's so much singing and dancing in Kenya. You guys love to celebrate, and it's amazing. So many smiles and laughs. It's a great time. So you need to go to that neighborhood where you had this success and be like, hey, this is what happened, and this is why it happened. Do you guys want me to come into your house and do the same thing? You know, and that's how you just build that positive atmosphere around fire prevention, and it shows your commitment and your pride to fire prevention. Over time, your community leaders will start to see fire prevention success. And your community leaders will understand why we do fire prevention and the importance of it. But it's not going to happen quick. First, we have to change our mind as firefighters. There's a lot of firefighters in my department here in Velva where they don't see the point of fire prevention. We have big fire trucks. We'll just go put it out if it starts. And that's not okay. We have to change as firefighters first before we can change anyone else's mind on this, and then work our way into the public and work our way into our leadership in order to be a champion for that cause. So like I said, fire prevention is a great way to reduce fire fatalities. There's the worst feeling in the world you could probably have. I've been there once, is where a firefighter dies. It's just something that eats at you for a long time on what you could have done different, how you could have responded different, and you play the what if games. If a firefighter dies on a call that was completely preventable, you just your community is hurting as a whole for something that just should not have happened in general. So it's a big task, but it's needed to reduce the firefighter fatalities in your community, to reduce the civilian fatalities in your community, to reduce the property loss in your community. And that's what we're here for. Like this picture says, how do you fill a bucket? this fire prevention bucket we have is huge. It is an extreme undertaking. You know, I don't know how many calls Nairobi goes on alone, but it's hundreds, if not thousands of calls. They're always going. So how are they going to prevent those calls? They're exhausted after fighting so many fires in one day, I'm sure. So to tell them fire prevention on top of what they're already doing. And I know a lot of you are in the same boat. You know, I'm a volunteer here in Velva. I have a full-time job and a family. Like, I have stuff to do. Fire prevention is just one more thing. But you just take it one step at a time. This quote comes from our friend Chief Hank from Chicago. This is what he tells me. You can't do it all at once necessarily, but if you do a little at a time and you start seeing those successes, then you start celebrating those successes, and eventually you will see the culture of the fire service change to the point where it's not acceptable to have some of these type of fires. And it's not acceptable for some of these fires to grow to the point that they should, because these fires should be able to be extinguished efficiently and safely at a smaller stage. And this is how we're going to save lives and money, is doing it this way. By the time you get out there and start spraying water on everything, it's too late. You've already, between the fire damage and the water damage, you have a lot of rebuilding and recovering to do. It impacts all those citizens that were involved in those fires. So, well, that works out perfect. I actually saved some time this time for questions. So sometimes I'm bad at that. Sometimes I talk too much. So if you have questions, I'll be here for a while. If I stop sharing my screen, Nancy, can we all see each other again?
Yes, we can.
Okay. There.
Thanks.
So.
There we go.
Do we have any questions or comments today? Like I said, normally I talk too much and I run out of time for questions. So I tried to be good at it today.
You did a great job. You did a great job. Any questions or comments that you'd like to make here?
We went over a lot of different subjects today, like fire-related human behavior, pre-fire planning, the 5 E's. All those subjects alone could be a course in themselves. So it was a lot of information, and you're more than welcome to discuss it here. Like I said, at tea time, discuss what efforts you guys are currently doing and how it works, or what kind of risk you guys see.
Any questions? I see so many of you that normally have some questions. Who wants to get us started? You can unmute yourself or raise your hand and I can help you with your muting. I know there's many. So we'll just give you a moment to think about what those are. Brian, you might also just peek through the chat. There was some good chats going on during the presentation. There might be some things to respond to there. While we're waiting for you to think about your questions, I'll do the formal wrap up. And we just want to thank you all for being here today. And thank you, Brian, for your time. This was really excellent and covered. A lot of times we talk about only at that community level, but this really gives that importance of the whole picture related to fire prevention and what we're really trying to accomplish when we go out into the community. There's firefighter safety that's a part of that, as well as reducing the risk to lives and property of the community. So thank you for doing that. I will point out just quickly, I mentioned it in the chat for you as well. Africa Fire Mission has a ton of resources for you on fire prevention and fire safety lessons that you can teach. We also have some videos on our YouTube channel that Jose has put together that you can actually post to your Facebook accounts that you can share on WhatsApp with others as a way of getting that community fire prevention material out. Feel free to use those. Feel free to share those as well. We will be posting the PowerPoint as well as the video from today's training on our website and YouTube channel. So make sure to check that out. And we'll be sending out an evaluation for each of you to complete. We really do look at those to evaluate what classes we'll be providing. I am excited to announce that after the symposium, we will have a few more weekly classes in December, and then we'll take a brief pause for the holidays, and we will resume weekly trainings in January. So keep these dates on your calendar. We may need to do a re-enrollment, but we'll make sure that everyone gets the new registration link for the first of the year. So thanks for attending, everyone. We are just so appreciative of each of you. I know there's been, I've seen some things going on in Kenya this week. There was a save in a fire in Isiolo County this week, and we just appreciate the work that you're doing, the mental capacity that it takes to do this job. So thank you very, very much. And Jose and Brian, I will pass tea time off to you.
All right. Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy.